Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and today we're going to take an in-depth look at Kabbalah Jewish mysticism. Let's actually start from the beginning, and we're going to talk about the first man, who is Adam. Adam and Eve, according to the Bible, were the first people. And again, many people think, and I know that the way they look at other things in the secular view, the history books, the science books, that man started millions of years ago and was a caveman. But today we're sophisticated. Actually, the truth is just a little bit the opposite according to the Jewish view. Jewish view that Adam and Eve were very sophisticated, high-level, spiritual people and recognize godliness right from the get-go. They actually, it says, a very interesting idea, and I'll take into the depths of the medrash. It says one of the powers of Adam was that he called names to all the animals. So the angels couldn't do it. God first asked the angels, call them names if you think you're so great. They were looking down at Adam because he was a physical being and angels are spiritual, and they said, we can't do it. So Adam, he turned to Adam, as we said, and Adam accomplished the goal that he actually called to all the animals names. So that's the medrash, and let's try to understand it a little bit. Try to think about this. What is the great wisdom of calling something a name? Say, well, let's have a new language. I mean, we have a dog, we have a cat. Think of your own names. I mean, it doesn't make you a genius to think of some name for a dog or different from a cat. Let's make our own language. But that's what I'm saying. If you look into it, it's very, very deep. Now, in Judaism, and that's what we're talking about, is Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. Everything in the world gets its actually life force from the letters in the Hebrew Aleph Beis. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew Aleph Beis, the ABCs, and through this combination, these is God's tools to create the world and create everything in it. So everything in the world has its unique form of creation that is creating it. So really, when you call a name in Hebrew, it wasn't just, all right, think of a different name for a dog or a cat. But it's actually look at its life source, its source of life, where it's actually coming from. And that obviously is truly a very deep level of wisdom. Now this extends it a little bit further, meaning that since everything has its own life force, it's in the world, that certain things, for example, when a person, God forbid, is sick. So a person gets sick, something's a little wrong with their life, obviously, and they need to have a tune-up. Well, physically, what's a tune-up? A medicine here, an operation there. We shouldn't know from these things, but that's what happens, and that person gets, as my words, tuned up, and now all of a sudden they're healthy because they had the right medicine. Obviously, a doctor has to know which medicine, has to know the right surgery. And it's not a hodgepodge, obviously, of a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but on the other hand, they know what fits, and that is the correct way to correct somebody. Now, there's many Hasidic stories of many ideas of going to tzaddikim, and the prophets also. Tzaddikim are righteous people. They go to the righteous people, or they go to these holy people, and they ask for a cure. Well, they don't ask them for medicine. They're not doctors. And there's two ways to accomplish this. One way is to pray, and one is to ask God to intervene and change things. I'll tell you a story. Everybody loves a story, of course. I have my million stories. One person came to the Mizritcher Maggid. He was a very famous rabbi in the 1700s in Galicia in Eastern Europe. And he wanted a son. He wanted a child. Unfortunately, that's again, it's a little bit of medicine. People go to doctors to try to have children. When they want to have children, they can't. And this person wasn't going. The child wasn't happening. So he went to the Maggid this rabbi, please pray for me. He says, give me some money. And, usually rather to do that, you pray, you help someone out as much as you can. So he gave him some money, and he says, that's not enough. Give me more. And he kept on going like this. No, give me more. I want more. And finally, it's a tremendous amount of money. He said, listen, for this amount of money, I can go home and pray by myself. And the Maggid, the rabbi, said, that's exactly what I want to hear from you. That I want you to go and pray now that you feel that you're ready to pray for what you want, then I'll also help you out and have my prayers. So that's one way to change things. But then on a very deep level, which is what we're trying to deal with today, is the Jewish Kabbalah. And that is just that if you can manipulate the life force, which means, as we said, the letters or the Hebrew letters or the energy that's constantly creating us, then actually you would have a different person. I mean, you'd have health, you'd have livelihood, you'd have what you want if you know how to manipulate these different energies. With that, now you understand a little bit what the Zohar, which is the basic work of Jewish Kabbalah, has to say. And that is, before you learn the Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism, and which means manipulate the world, you have to be 40 years old. What's with the 40 years old? 40 years old is they assume you're mature, you don't have the youthful energy anymore. And the young people want to change everything. They're always on campuses, they're always protesting. Very good. They have, nothing wrong with that. They want to change the world for the better. But certain times, let's be honest, certain things that the youth want to change are not the right things. I don't want to get into politics here, and you have maybe different views of things, but a lot of times the youth want things that are just really a little absurd and very immature. And they have to calm down. It's good that they have youthful energy, but on the other hand, you have to be mature in order to know what society really needs. And this is the answer for us also. When you learn the Kabbalah, that you have the power to change things. On the other hand, that you have to be mature. You can't just go around changing everything. And I'll give you a story for that also. This is a very famous story from Shlomo, or Solomon the king, the wise king. And there was a person in this kingdom, one of his advisors, that really says wanted to know the language of the birds. Birds, I know they tweet and they have little songs. I guess they wake you up in the morning like they do me outside the window. Very cute, very nice, melodious sometimes. But they really do have a language. There is a communication, and science is coming to that. Also, animals do communicate with each other. They're not just chirping or roaring, but they actually have a communication between themselves. So this Torah says this thousands of years ago. And he wanted to know the language. This person wanted to know the language of the animals. And Shlomo just said they didn't want to teach him because he was the wisest man in the world that ever lived. And he finally, we call him Jewish, a little nudging, a little prodding. Finally, he agreed. All right, he said, I'm going to teach you, but I'm telling you, I warn you, I don't know if it's the best thing in the world. All right, what's so bad about knowing what the birds were saying? So this person learned the language of the birds, went home, and then he heard some birdies outside his window, like we have here in Delmar. The birds are chirping, and they're talking, and they're saying, this person's donkey is going to die. His animal is going to be stolen and die. So he says, well, he's stolen. I better put some guards over here that they won't steal. And true enough, he put some guards, and some robbers tried to break into the barn, whatever was there, and they were chased away. And he says, good, see, it's important to learn it was right. Shlomo Solomon was wrong telling me it's not the right thing. I just saved my donkey because I knew the language of the birds. And then another instance says he heard the birds saying it, twerping again, tweeting, and he says, what was wrong? He says that we hear that this balabas, the person, this householder, his house is going to burn down. And he says that, well, that I have to prevent. So he had some buckets around, and he just was very careful that the house shouldn't burn down. And lo and behold, it didn't burn down, and he was out saying he's the outsmartest person in the world, because now he knew the language of the birds, saved him his animals, saved him his house. And then another instance happened. He heard the birds singing, and he said, your son is going to die. So then he didn't know what to do. How can you stop that? And actually his son died. And then he ran over to Shlomo Melech Solomon. He says, what's the issue? Well, tell me what the story is. Solomon told him like this. Really, there was a decree from heaven that something bad should happen to you. This is all right. The donkey. Sometimes we say maybe today would be a little car nick, little accident, a fender bender. So something bad happened, and you say that that's a kapara in Hebrew. You say it's an atonement. It's finished. It's done. No problem. He says, well, if they didn't get you on that, you outsmarted them, they're going to hurt your house. From your animal, they'll let your car to your house. So, and that didn't work either. A little bit of fire in the house, right? Obviously, that's a big damage. Well, they had to have something. Has to be some damage, so they took it out on your son. So I told you, he says, I warned you, it's very dangerous to know the language of the birds. You don't know what's supposed to happen, and you think you're outsmarting everybody, but in turn you got outsmarted yourself. It's the same thing with us also. You have to be careful about knowing everything, but the source of everything. But that's why you have to be 40 years old. That was our point, because you have to be mature enough to know who should get healed, who should have babies, what the future is going to bring with this child, and we don't know. And you try your best. I'm going to say go to the doctor or try to make a living and try to better your lot as much as you can, but whatever comes, you have to accept with full faith, and you not have to outthink God, smarter than all of us. In any case, that was the idea of the creation, and the beautiful idea of the letters of the creation were being manipulated to create things. There's obviously trillions and trillions of creations in the world today, as we can see that, we can look around, and they're all created from these holy letters of the Hebrew Aleph base. And really, as we say, there's a system in the world. There's actually a blueprint in the world. And it actually says a very, very beautiful and very deep idea in Kabbalah, that the Torah is the blueprint of the entire world. So if you would be able to look into the Torah, that you actually would be able to see how everything is made. And now we have a lot of stories today, so we'll tell you even another story. This story goes back about 250 years ago, middle of 1700s. And the first Lubavitch Rebbe, Hasidic Rebbe, he was not only obviously very intelligent in the Torah, in Judaism, but he knew the secular sciences also, and he knew math. So what happened is just that they didn't have watches so many in those days, 250 years ago, as much as they have today. And they have a sundial. So the prince, this is like Russia, prince and the landlord of the lands had a beautiful sundial, and he loved it. It was in the middle of his garden. And what happened was, it was just that he every time around a few hours in the day would blank out. And obviously, if the sun's not shining, you don't have a sundial, so it would blank out. He didn't understand what was happening because it was sunny out. In any case, that the first Lubavitch Rebbe looked at, they knew nobody could figure it out. That was the story. He asked all the scientists, no one could figure out. And they asked then the Rebbe, he says, you're very knowledgeable, maybe you can help us out in this. And he said, using trigonometry, the sundial was here, and a tree was up high, and he just using a little trigonometry, he saw that the trees were blocking the sundial. So he figured that out. So therefore he had a real reputation of being smarter than everybody else, of even in math and geometry, trigonometry. So then another situation happened. Now he had a good reputation, and a lot of people have never seen it. I actually am from Chicago. They had Independence Hall, a museum. They had these old maps. Old, I mean from the 1600s and 1700s. They were coming to America, and they were mapping out North and South America. Excuse me. If you ever seen them, some people have never seen them, they don't know what I'm talking about, but North America maybe goes like this. It goes wiggly in. It looks, obviously, as we know what a North America and South America looks today on a real map, so it looks obviously funny and distorted. But, they were working it out. Like say we go to the moon, we go to Mars, they found oxygen, water, we don't know what we're looking for. Little by little, you discover what's supposed to be there and what really is there. So that was a few hundred years ago that they were looking at maps, and someone then came with a map of North America. Here you were in White Russia, so obviously they didn't have satellites, they didn't have planes, obviously. So they said, this is a new discovery. Just like when you see headlines, they found water on Mars, it's headline news. So in those days, it was like, we found something with North America. It's new news. Okay, new news. Everybody's excited. They showed the Rebbe then, because they said, we know you're scientific. This is the latest scientific discovery. Just like when they find some new pictures of Pluto or some planet, it's the latest news. Everybody gets excited. So he looked at it and he said, this is not it. It's not the right thing. You wouldn't believe it. Here you are. I mean, if you have a proof, here you're sitting in Russia, and 200 years ago, how are you supposed to know what? How can you say it's not true? But they had the latest discoverers, or obviously the ships, and they try surveying North America, and you say it's not right. Who knows? But soon enough, obviously, if you would see these maps, obviously they got it right. They got it right one day, that they tuned in and said it was wrong. They thought, this is the real map of North America, and then they tuned it up and saw it was incorrect. So they come to the Rebbe again. And listen, when you're right, but how did you know? You're sitting here in Russia. How do you know what North America was supposed to be better than surveyors who were sitting there in North America? And he answered this. This is the crunch answer. He says, I saw the book of creation in the Bible, and I saw how the world was created, and I saw that's not the way it was created. Very, very profound, very, very deep. Again, that through looking at the Bible, it looks like little stories, creation stories, and not depth. But if you delve into it and get the secrets of the creation, you can see how the world is created, and ultimately, hopefully being mature, that you can change things. But again, even if you're not at that spiritual level or intellectual level, a person can always pray to change his lot or the lot of other people. Now, we're talking about this world, but this world is made as a parallel to higher spiritual worlds. And that's why it says in the Ethics of Our Father that there was a big favor that God did for the humanity. Because, for example, if you would not know what feelings are, like Mr. Spock in Star Trek, they say, I have love, and he'd say, I don't know what love means. He wouldn't have that feeling. You wouldn't understand it. So that's what I'm saying. If God say He loves us, and we wouldn't have any feeling of love, so that you love your child. You know what that means. You do anything for your child, and we relate to that. And if you say God then relates to humanity that way, then I don't think we have any semblance of really what that means. On the other hand, The other hand is just a little bit. We can't understand what it means a love for a father to a child, a mother to a child. So therefore, this idea that the physical world, looking deeper into the physical world, can parallel the spiritual worlds at a higher level. So you have to have an abstract idea, again, that God is not just a big jolly green giant in the, Jack and the Beanstalk. God is up there on high. There was more a lot of Greek mythology. That's what they were thinking about. Who is tough? Some big football player, the toughest guy around. Well, if God, you say, is strong and he's tough, well, he's bigger than the bigger football player. There's more of Greek mythology. We know, through Western thought, that's obviously foolishness. God's not a physical being, he's a spiritual being. It's not that he's tough, that he's just bigger than the biggest football player around. But so on the other hand, though, he is strong, and we do have to understand what strength is and what is kindness in our ideas, and we understand someone who is kind, someone is strong, and then we have to abstract in it, then parallel that idea to the Almighty. Well, the first thing you have to understand, and these are, I'm touching upon the 10 spheros. The 10 spheros are two of them, as we just talked about, are kindness and severity. So those are emotions. And on top of that, in control of them, is intellect. Now that's something that we can look at also. A human being stands erect, head above their heart. What's the difference in an animal? Animal, their head and their heart and their behind is all at one level. And that's what an animal is. It's all emotions. It doesn't think. It does have power of thought. We were just talking about before, communication, but it's not like intellect that's going to override their emotions. But by a human being, we stand erect, and their mind is above our heart. But that just comes to show you that your intellect, your mind, is above your emotions. So that's one idea. It's a beautiful idea. It's of an important idea of how that the human being's mind, that makes us different than the animal, how that an intellect can override your emotions, controls your emotions, inflames your emotions if you think about the right things, of course. You think about how awesome God is, how infinite God is, that's going to ignite a feeling of love and awesomeness into the Almighty. So therefore, using your mind to control your emotions, not having like an animal, the emotions control your intellect. Very important part in Kabbalah. But again, looking at the physical person, man versus an animal, we can abstract, not that, again, God is a human being, because he's not. It's a spiritual being, not a male or a female. But on the other hand, that a person could look at that, the physical world, and abstract and extend the idea of what a spiritual world could be. There's many, many ideas about this. And again, looking at the human being, taking another step further, that we are made of many parts. We're not an amoeba, one cell. We're one big unit. Like we said, we have two different, right away I talked about the mind and the heart, but of course we have so many parts to us. We have so many different cells, but ultimately you're a human being, one person. So you come through the door and here comes his nose, here comes Joe's heart, here comes Joe's foot. You say, here comes Joe. And he is made up of thousands of parts, how many cells in a human being, and they're all work together, they're all coordinated. If they don't, then that's what a sick person is. Something's not functioning right. But a normal, healthy person, everything in the body is functioning in a normal state, working together. Now that is another beautiful idea, that we can look at the human being and extend it. It actually says, if you want an interesting pasuk, a sense, that man is an olam katan. Man is a small world. So therefore, by looking at man, you can understand the bigger world that is around us. So therefore also certain things, like we talk about, there's planets, Pluto, Mars, there's stars all over. I mean, again, we know just from basic science that the universe, light years, I don't know if we can really comprehend that these are just numbers, that we can understand what a light year really is, or how powerful the sun is, how much energy it's emitting. And again, the vastness, the quality of energy of stars. And there's billions of stars that are as big, if not bigger, than our sun. How much vastness in all the solar systems. Again, we can't even, I don't think we can comprehend. These are just numbers. Light years, planets, billion stars. These are just numbers. But just to think about how vast and incredible the world is, that's incredible. But, so you might think there's a lot of different parts of the world and they're all non-cohesive. But the truth of the matter is, look at our body. I mean, there's a big difference between a brain and a heart and your foot. Different parts of your body. They all work together, part of one unit. That's a very important part of Judaism, Kabbalah, of just that unity. I mean, again, I know Albert Einstein was working on a unified system of the universe. I mean, it's really just his thoughts were 100 years old. Judaism and Kabbalah had these ideas forever, because that they understood there's one God, there's one world, and we're all working together. Even on a human level, it doesn't look like people are on the same page. It's what wars are about. They're fighting for something or another. They don't agree with each other. That's why you have a war. But so therefore you say, well, where's there's unity in the world? There's tragedy in the world. Volcanoes, stars do blow up, for example, and people just don't get the bigger picture. But ultimately, God created the world in such a way that there is a bigger picture, and it all works together. It's a very interesting idea. Not that I truly understand it myself, but I'll tell you the Talmud, maybe you should think about it. It just says that if there'd be one star missing, and again, there's a billion stars out there, look in the middle of the night. Who cares if there's a few stars missing, not a few stars missing? Would it bother you? Wouldn't bother me. I mean, who'd even notice altogether? But if one star would be missing, the Talmud says, then the world would be destroyed. The only example I would give is just like, you have a building, a wall, and you pull out one brick, so you have 1,000 or 10,000 bricks making a building. So big deal, so you take one lousy brick out. Makes a difference to anything. But if the wrong brick, you take a brick out, the whole building will collapse. So therefore, that's what we have to understand, the unity of the universe, but we can understand by the unity of a person. One thing goes a little bit haywire in our body, God forbid, one valve or something, then obviously the body would be totally sick and messed up and surgery like we started to show. So there is, to sum up, very few lessons that we have in Kabbalah, that because it's so major and so vast in learning, just give you a taste of the Kabbalah, of what Jewish mysticism has to say. And we just talked about anciently everything was written down, and there are truths, and just because it's 3,000, 4,000 years old doesn't mean, well, they were just a bunch of idiots writing that. What would they know thousands of years ago? That's not what the Kabbalah would say, that they would look at it and they knew the universe, like I say, better than we did. They had spiritual feeling for what the world is. They were tuned into the world better than we. So just delving into these ancient texts, we can find some deeper secrets, not only about the world, but also about ourselves and our own lives. And just give you a taste and a glimpse of what the Kabbalah, ancient Jewish mysticism, has to say. Thank you very much.